Chris, Charlie, we both work at Uber ATC in Pittsburgh now.
So this talk is really about just getting the basics out there. So like, what is car hacking? How does it work? So when you leave, anytime you read any kind of news article, you'll know what they're talking about. You'll know like whether this is a big deal or not a big deal. It's just sort of like a primer.
Yeah, and it gives you a timeline of how these things occurred, right? I think, with the GPAC got a lot of attention, but there was a lot of things that led up to that. Specifically, the academics from University of Washington and University of California, San Diego released a paper in 2010 that detailed how you would go about sending canned messages on a vehicle to control physical things, right? This was a pretty big deal because at this time there weren't a lot of people doing this type of research.
Right, so they showed that if you could plug into the OBD2 port in your car, they could physically control parts of the car.
Yeah, which was great. But of course, the first thing people say, right, is, well, you're plugged in. And really, that shows that they don't understand the issue. It isn't that you're plugged in, it's that messages can be sent to control physical things. So when you're plugged in, that's just your first stage of research. What do you do when you have the haters, right? You say, well, okay, they complained that we are plugged in. Let's do it remotely.
Right, so then a year later, they published a paper where they showed that they could remotely attack a car, and then they could send those same messages and physically control. The actual remote exploit that we did, since we know a lot about that, so it's easy for us to talk about. So the actual vulnerability was in this, the head unit, which was, what Uconnect is the name of the thing. So it's a thing that has like navigation, your radio, some apps, Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
So it's basically the big thing that you would think was a computer in your car.
But realize too, this was made by Harman Kardon. This isn't made by Jeep. They purchased this from one of their suppliers. So it wasn't FCA people like making this thing. They contact a supplier and they buy, I don't know, 1.4 million units of these things.
Yep. And it turns out that these head units are not only in Jeeps, which is what I had a Jeep, but they're also in lots of other kind of cars that are made by Fiat.
Which we'll show them later. This is A to B ownage. So this is how long it would take if we got an IP address of a car, reprogrammed it, and executed stuff that would do whatever we wanted.
So here you can see we're not plugged into the OBD2 port. It's like a magic show.
This is us showing you there's nothing up our sleeves.
Right. So then we were able to, you can do things with the radio, such as put these two handsome guys on there.
Turn that up.
And that's what we did to Greenberg there, like blast the music.
So then you can't really hear what's going on now because the music's loud. I guess that's sort of a bad thought. But the point is he can't even turn the music down now. We've disabled the knobs so they don't pay attention to that.
And the real neat thing to know was there was physical controls that were still linked to software code, right? So you're trying to turn the volume down, but it's still based on a service on the head unit that if we terminated, you couldn't turn the volume down.
So then you reboot the car, that'll fix it, right? But it doesn't.
Yeah.
So you can survive the reboot.
Exactly.
So,
but how did we do this in a distance, right? I talked before about how I was tracking Charlie. Charlie was smart and went and bought a burner phone from Sprint at Walmart so he could, .com. And then, so you could communicate with the car. And it was just communication over IP, right? So this is stuff that we already knew. This isn't us figuring out, cellular stuff, GSM stuff. This is you get a phone, you make it your hotspot, you make your laptop connect to it, and now you have a Linux laptop that's on Sprint's network that can talk to all the cars.
Right. So originally we saw that it worked over Wi-Fi, but we noticed that we were like, well, maybe you can't hit the cars from just the plain internet. They do have blockage from the Sprint network to the rail internet. But if you were on a Sprint device, you could talk to other Sprint devices.
You would think it would be segregated in some form or segmented. It wasn't. Side note, I was a dummy and signed up for a 2-year Sprint contract that I'm still paying for today. Lo and behold, it's not just Jeeps, and we didn't know, right? That's why we did this scan project. There was a bunch of vehicles from Dodge Vipers, which was crazy, to Grand Jeep Cherokees. All in all, a bunch of different makes or models in the same make. So we found a whole bunch of cars.
Yeah, I was like $100,000 Viper. I was like, I wanted to turn the radio up so bad.
Exactly.
I did.
He needs Hot 103, St. Louis' finest R&B. Conclusions, right? I mean, I don't think anyone disagrees. They're all becoming more complex. They're all becoming more multiplex. I like it. There's a lot of features that are good. At the same time, security can be a big concern. More people are looking at car stuff, which is cool. Like, you can't just have a few people looking at it. You know, there's a bunch of people looking for browser bugs all the time, and browsers are becoming more secure, and there's people writing secure stuff, security software for them. So I think more people need to look at car things.
More people are definitely looking, and that's one of the reasons we released all our tools. We want, we want to go to talks about and then exploitation of cars. Right?
All of our tools come with the beer license. If you use them and you see us at a bar, you have to buy us a beer. That's the only license we have. But I think the most concerning ones are from end to end. Whether it's what we did or the dongle stuff, you basically have arbitrary control over the car. And if the car has certain cyber physical features, then you can control things that end up being dangerous. And that's, I think, everyone's biggest concern right now.
Right. So let's build cars that are, more robust to those kinds of attacks.
Exactly. And lastly, there's ways to protect these things. It's hard to say where anyone's at because there's not much transparency in the industry, where again, you can look on Microsoft's blog and see how the newest Met works to protect you from browser exploits. You can't really look up anything on cars to see what they're doing. There are protection methods known. We wrote a prototype, so hopefully they're doing it, but it's hard to see in. And with that being said, thanks for coming here and listen to us yak about cars for 44 minutes.
Thanks.